I am Dominic Hamilton. I am the Network Engagement Manager here at Equal Justice Works. I manage our Southern and Mid-Atlantic portfolios. And in those portfolios, there are sponsors and fellows, and I will get into more what that may look like if you are interested in applying for a fellowship. I also want to say this is a particularly special webinar for me because I am an HBCU law school grad. I went to Howard University School of Law, graduate of 2022. And so this is a personal experience for me in applying for public interest jobs, particularly fellowships. So today's agenda, I went through introductions, just introduced myself. I'll also go into who is Equal Justice Works if this is your first time getting to know us and are hearing about us. What is even an Equal Justice Works fellowship? And why should you even apply for a fellowship? And some common misconceptions I think among so especially first-time law students and some fellowship benefits that come with those. And then also, how do you become an EJW fellow? I'll go through the components of our DYO fellowship in particular, because that's the application we have open right now. Also, how to submit a very strong application, some details about our project design, how to find a host organization, which can also be a very kind of ambiguous process sometimes, and also what's next. And we'll have a short Q&A as well for any additional questions that may not be asked throughout the presentation. Okay, so like who is Equal Justice Works? Who are we? What do we do? What is the organization? What is our goal? What is our mission? Um, and our mission overall is to create opportunities for lawyers to transform their passion for equal justice into a lifelong commitment to public service. And this can come to fruition in many ways in public service, but particularly we focus on matriculating fellowships and public interest attorneys into fellowships to help advocate for legal communities who can't advocate for themselves or are not often able to advocate for themselves or have power to even have someone or the money to have somebody advocate for them for very dire legal matters oftentimes. And so that's our overall goal and premise. And then in particular, we have a strategic vision as well, in which we're expanding upon our mission. And one of those pillars that we're working on is pillar 2, and that's working on diversifying the public interest field. And so this is directly related to our pillar 2 work in diversifying the public interest field with people from all different backgrounds and all different passions. And also sometimes we're looking even into those who don't have JDs as well. And so we're really trying to expand in that way. And so that's our mission. Just to give an overview of what Equal Justice Works does a little bit more, we are the largest provider of public interest law school fellowships. We have over 200 fellows at nonprofit legal services organizations across the country per cycle. And our mission is to, like I said, mobilize the next generation of passionate public service leaders. And we do this by facilitating fellowships and partnering with firms, corporations, nonprofits, foundations, and law schools. So we have a lot of constituencies that we work with, a lot of partnerships that we're building upon and continuing to expand and expound upon in order to continue to grow our mission. This is a special year for us. We were founded in 1986, so this is the 40th year of Equal Justice Works, and we are going to be celebrating our 40 years in a big celebration in October in DC. It's called Scales of Justice. So we're really excited for that. And in these 40 years, we have accumulated about 2,700 alumni. So it's a really, really big network of amazing, like-minded, outstanding leaders that have been connected through Equal Justice Works. And we're really proud to say that 85% of our alumni do remain in public interest. And so it's a really, a solid community of amazing people. So we're really excited to celebrate that this October. Okay, what is an Equal Justice Works Fellowship in particular? And a fellowship in itself is usually, a particular job that you have you're working on particular research or you're doing a particular project, and it's usually for a certain amount of time, a short amount of time usually. For a particular Equal Justice Works Fellowship, our fellows work for 2 years at nonprofit organizations on an innovative project designed by the fellow and the host organization. And I'll go in a little bit more about those different components of an Equal Justice Works Fellowship, but that's just the fellowship, our fellowships in a nutshell. We do have two different kinds of fellowships. Today I'll be focusing on our Design Your Own Fellowship, but we also have cohort fellowships or program design issue area based fellowships like our Housing Justice Program, Disaster Resilience Program, Opioid Crisis Response Program, and now we just recently launched a financial empowerment program. And so if you're interested in our cohort programs, happy to talk about that outside of this presentation particularly and connect you with our program managers and that work on those programs. But for this particular fellowship or webinar, we're talking about Design Your Own. So I kind of wanted to address like why even a fellowship. Just to give some background on me, when I first went into law school, I knew that I wanted to do public interest work. Did I know how that was going to look? No, I didn't know if I wanted to do a clerkship. I didn't know if I wanted to work in government. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I really wanted to. I was really passionate about helping people who did not have the funds to advocate for themselves or to afford who could afford a lawyer. I was the first. I'm first generation law student, so I was the first, person to go to law school and graduate from law school in my family. I'm the only lawyer in my family, and so I was really um, adamant about being able to be intentional about the way I give back to my community and those that came before me and paved the way before me. So. Going into law school, like I said, I didn't know what public interest work exactly looked like, but I knew I wanted to do it. And learning about fellowships, um, at the time, I will give it to Howard because Howard has done way better, way better at expanding their public interest programs in the last few years, which I'm really, really proud of. But at the time, there wasn't a lot of targeted uh, or connections that I can make for public interest work. And so I had to do a lot of my own research, and sometimes that was great, and sometimes it kind of leads you down a rabbit hole or of insecurity or unsureness, and so. I wanted to definitely demystify this concept of what even is a fellowship and also share some benefits of what I believe fellowships provide. So I think these are some common misconceptions, not just around fellowships, but I think public interest careers in general. There's the idea that public interest jobs don't pay enough to be sustainable, and that can be true maybe on the front end and maybe in your first year. And also. I tell our candidates, please do your research. Do your research when you're researching, jobs, when you do your research when you're researching host organizations, because they may differ and different privates they're definitely different from private sector roles. I don't know if we're ever going to close that gap there as much as that the gap is currently, but many fellowships offer competitive benefits and also repayment support, and also you can be part of the public loan service forgiveness program, like if that's still going to be around, but that's another conversation for another day. But I think there's many benefits outside of there's definitely salaries that you can find that will be sustainable for you. Will you get rich? Maybe take some time if that's your goals, that maybe it's different, but it's definitely rewarding in a lot of different ways. And your salary will continue to grow as you continue to do this work, because you gain credibility, you gain experience. And so I think that's a big one. But obviously, please do your research. Also, uh, there's a misconception you need to follow a traditional or elite pipeline to succeed, and this isn't true. There's no single path, and many public interest lawyers come from diverse schools, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences. So it's really based upon, your own interests, and you can really make your own pathway. You don't have to follow anyone else's pathway to be successful in a public interest career. Also, there's the conception that fellowships are only for perfect candidates, right? Or maybe top candidates, or and strong applications come from a range of experience and demonstrated commitment. It's not about perfection; it's about your demonstrated commitment to the work. It's about what drives you and what impassions you to really do this work, because that's what's going to separate you from those who maybe is just doing it because it's just a job. They just need a job, and so. It's not about perfection. It's about you. Excuse me. And then there's also conception your work won't have a long time career growth, and that's really not true. Like I said, 85% of our fellows remain in their public interest careers. Many of our fellows go on to continue their fellowship work long after their 2 years and continue to grow upon it. Many of our fellows become executive directors of their host organizations or go to found their own nonprofits. And so public interest careers offer, a plethora of leadership opportunities, subject matter expertise, and pathways into policy, advocacy, and impact roles. And so, even if you don't want to if you start in policy, you don't have to, you can transition into litigation, and other types of impact roles in how you see fit. But there's so many different doors that can open for you in a public interest career, particularly the EJW fellowship. And also, there's a concession that you have to figure out everything on your own. And that's not true. That may have been my experience at first, but that's why we're offering these resources. So you don't have to figure it out on your own. So we can guide you into, possibly seeking mentorship, utilizing your alumni networks, collaborating with environments that are core parts of fellowship programs. It's really important, and I'll get more into this about using your network. A lot of times, not particularly for our fellowships, but in the job world, it's not necessarily about what you know always. It's sometimes about who you know. That's really true. So definitely do not try to figure things. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. Even if your own career services, is not super public interest geared, we can definitely help you to connect with someone who would be able to help you in that way. Um, so yeah. If you have questions about those, happy to chat as well. Okay. I think I went, okay. Some fellowship benefits. So I think that a fellowship is a really great way to enter into a public interest career, especially or design your own fellowship, because you really get to gain hands-on experience, and launch your career as you see fit. You get to design a project that could be rooted in the community of your own, rooted in community that you just see have major legal gaps that a fellowship could fill, or the lived experience. You've been through it. Now you have the legal skills to be able to help those who need that help. And so it's a really great way to launch your public service career, as you see fit, and not along anyone else's terms, but really create your own path. Also, for Equal Justice Works Fellowships, we have ongoing opportunities for learning and networking. We have a learning and networking manager who, puts on great events, virtual events, and fireside chats and workshops and trainings for our fellows throughout the year. And so it's a really great opportunity to engage in those opportunities. Also, participation in our very large alumni network. Like I said, networking is so important in the legal field, and so you would become an alumni in our 2,700 alumni network. And then also we have annual leadership development training in Washington, D.C. Has another name. Al, if you want to drop the name in the chat, that would be great. I'm forgetting what the name is called. Um,
I think it's Fellowship Summit now. It
yes,
says it's in the
Fellowship
title.
Summit. And so our Fellowship Summit, which is going to encompass our leadership development training that we have every year, where we fly all of our fellows into DC, and provide substantive training over about 2 days, with alumni, with subject matter experts, with different types of outstanding speakers. And they get to also create community with our staff and amongst themselves. And so it's a really great opportunity as well to engage and to build upon those networks, and in the work that they do. And then also we have a loan repayment assistance program, which provides, I believe, up to $5,000 a year if you are eligible. And it also does vary per program. So that's specifically for DYO. It may be a little bit different if you are interested in our cohort programs. Also, all of our fellowships, the host organization should provide or have to actually provide healthcare coverage and other employment benefits. And this is also dependent on the programs. So definitely, like I said, do your research or, ask those questions. And then we do ask for the salaries to be commensurate with other similar employees at the organization, usually the entry level attorneys. I will go into a little bit their salary. We do have salary caps for our design your own. And so I can go into that a little bit later and actually answer any questions around that. But also, you become part of a close-knit community of public service leaders. Like I said, over 2,700 alumni. A lot of our alumni, almost all of our alumni, are very, very like to be engaged, like to continue to meet with fellows. We're actually about to launch a mentorship program with our alumni, and so it's a really close knit community of public service leaders, not even just our alumni, but our sponsors, our donors, and our law school professionals. And so it's a really great community to just be a part of for the duration of your career. So, how to become an Equal Justice Works Fellow, particularly, this is our Design Your Own. And so our Design Your Own application actually is open right now, opened in May, and it'll be closing on September 17th of this year. And here, like I said, the salary is up to 66.5 thousand per year. Just to give some clarity there, if with your host organization, I did say I was going to talk about this later, but I can talk about it right now. That is the cap. So if your host organization is offering less than that, like I said, you have to do your research, and it's up to you to decide if you want to accept that. If your host organization is offering more, it's up to them to cover that gap. And so, like I said, happy to answer questions about that. This 2-year fellowship program, and like I said, you get to really have hands-on experience in an area of your choice, in designing metrics that you think fit the best way to meet the legal gap that you're seeking to close. Just to give an idea of our recent Design Your Own fellowship classes, our class of 2024, which is our largest DYO class to date, had 84 fellows. Our class of 2025 had 60 fellows. And our class of 2026, we just closed the class in May at 60 fellows. And so we're hoping for another 60 fellow class for 2027. We're in the midst of our renewal and confirmation season right now. So then that's really exciting. So I'm hoping to see some of you in our application cycle this year. Just to give a brief overview of what the numbers look like or statistics of this class. We have 21 states plus DC across all of our 2026 class, 35 different law schools, 54 different host organizations, and 61 sponsors. So going into the fellowship components, we've discussed what even is a fellowship, but now what are the components of that fellowship? And there's the project that's what you're going to be working on throughout those 2 years. There's the candidate who you're the one that's going to be driving those goals in that timeline. That's the host organization, and that supports you during those 2 years, that supervises you, that gives you guidance and advice on your project during those 2 years. And then there's the sponsor, and that's the person who really, or the entity that is really seeking to engage with the project, but they're also funding your project. And so it's a really interesting dynamic of components and relationships, and I'll go through each one. So the candidate, we do have eligibility requirements for each candidate. You must be a member of a graduate law school by 2027 with a JD or LLM or work authorization. However, you should not have had any previous full-time public interest attorney position. So if you were, you are a year out of law school and you were, a staff attorney at Legal Aid of DC for any amount of time in a full-time permanent position, that would disqualify you from applying for this fellowship. However, that clerkships, if you were a clerk for a year or 2 years, that does not disqualify you. Or if you were in public sector, so if you worked in in private sector, if you worked at a big law firm doing contract law for a year, that does not disqualify you. Just no public interest attorney position. Also, no previous participation in other major fellowship programs such as SCADN or Echoing Green. However, I think this is a really big plus. And actually, this was a plus for me coming out of a law school, especially at an HBCU law school, no transcript or GPA class rank, because I felt like my part, probably 90% of my law school experience, you were based or scaled upon your rank and your GPA, and every job wanted to know that if you're top of your class. And I think that this is, while it's great if you are top of your class. It's great if you do have a really high GPA. It's great if you're M during classes. That's amazing. But we're not disqualifying you if you're not. What we're literally looking at is the demonstrated commitment to public service. If you went to law school knowing that this is the work that you wanted to do, and you passed all your classes, you know that this is that you're really dedicated to this work, that you are really passionate about this work, this is all you ever wanted to do, then this is for you. We also look at the background and skills that you carry in the proposed project. Have you done community service work in the past? Have you done volunteer work in the past? Have you maybe publish some work, some research papers around this different type of work. And so we're looking at your background and the skills that you acquired before law school and during law school that demonstrate that commitment to public interest. And then the host organization. This is really important, and I'll get in more into how to even find a host organization a little bit later. But yeah, it should be a nonprofit organization with legal staff. It should also be capable of providing the benefits like such as healthcare, as I mentioned earlier, office space, and even remote work. They also should be able to support you and supervise new attorneys. This is really important as well because especially if you're coming straight out of law school, you don't have any work experience, this is going to be your first job. It's really important that they're able to support you. A lot of times with the Design Your Own Fellowship, you're often the only attorney in the office who is working on that particular work. And so it's really important that you have the sufficient support and guidance. And it's a plus if your supervisor has the experience. They should have experience in the area of your project. Do they have to be experts? That depends on the nature of the work, but they definitely should be able to properly guide you and advise you on, moving forward your timeline, your goals, and your overall outcomes and metrics of success. And then also, your project should align with the strategic vision and mission of the host organization. Strong alignment between the project and host organization is very, very important because the expertise element. Like I said, you're going to be a baby lawyer, so that element is paramount and sometimes often seamlessly completing your fellowship. You don't want to feel like you're in silo and you can't ask anyone about the work that you're doing in your host organization, or that the work is so different from what they're doing that it just doesn't align. And so that's really important, and that goes into also during your research. And also demonstrated fit. You want to make sure that you fit well with this host organization. This is important because you're going to be collaborating with your host organization on creating a project. And also, this is where you're going to be for 2 years. And so for those 2 years, you want to make sure that you are in an environment that, is comfortable for you, that you feel like you can ask questions, that you feel like you can grow and your project can grow seamlessly. And so that's important as well. Make sure that the host organization fits you and you fit each other. More about the actual project. The project has eligibility requirements as well. It should serve an underserved community or population, address an unmet legal issue. And, this could also, I come from a very underprivileged background. Uh, grew up in poverty. And so that kind of drove my reason for going to law school. And so in designing a project, when I was thinking about it, I was definitely thinking about it from my own personal experience and wanting to advocate for the communities that I come from, and particularly family law and particularly substance abuse issues. And so, in writing a personal statement, and which we'll get more into, you definitely want to think about, if that's your experience, you want to highlight that experience. If that's the type of what drives you in that in serving the underserved populations, we definitely want to know that. And so, but it should be serving the underserved population, addressing an unmet legal need. It also should be innovative. Discrete project designed to have a lasting impact. So it's not necessarily we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. You definitely want to be adding to the wheel. And so often maybe your host organization uh, has a, they're getting intake on a specific issue, or maybe there's a law that was just passed, that maybe they don't have the capacity to fill a staff attorney role, or to help this particular subset of community. And a fellowship maybe great to fill that in an innovative way. It's innovative. It's something. It's a community that they haven't served before. It's a law that they haven't worked on implementing before, and one that you see that you're passionate about as well, and fits in that way. It should also have a lasting impact in terms of like sustainability. And so we're looking also at what type of metrics are you putting in place to make sure that the project will last long, hopefully, after your fellowship? It's a self-help material. This is a training that can be modeled after other host organizations. We're also looking at that around the project. So you want to think about how you're going to create sustainability and innovation around a project idea as well. And also, you can incorporate many different ways in which you want to achieve your goals. It can be impact litigation. It can be direct representation, awareness raising, community and education outreach, coalition building, legislative reform, policy reform. It can be, whichever ways that you feel like are best to meet the goals that you seek to meet for your project and for the communities that you seek to serve, in terms of a combination or even a combination of those. It's up to you to decide that and to, lay that out and to delineate how you're going to do that. However, this is not focused on criminal defense or international law, but just some extra keys for success is, is distinctive from a staff attorney position. Like I said, a lot of times our fellows are the only ones that are working on those issues or their project goals in the host organization. And so it does not, 90% of your work should be focused on your project goals and your project objectives. So it's not a staff attorney position where you're like helping with all types of different issues that's happening at the host organization. You should be focusing primarily on your fellowship work. Like I said, built-in sustainability, pilots for new legal services or delivery mechanisms as well. And it should be ambitious but feasible. So, and that's something that I'll talk about with the application. Reach for the stars, but definitely make sure you're able to reach for those stars in those 2 years because they go by really fast. And then sponsors. So this is the ultimate audience for your application. This is the component that is going to fund your application for 2 years. And so our sponsors, the types of sponsors that we have, are law firms, corporations, foundations, and individuals, bar associations as well. We also have anonymous donors as well. And so we have two different models for our design your own fellowship. And so we have a co-sponsorship model. In this model, a lot of times law firms and corporations will partner together because the corporations are often clients of the law firms, and they'll partner together because they maybe are already partnering or they want to build upon their pro bono work, and they'll partner together to co-sponsor a fellow. We also have a full fellowship sponsors, or sponsors who fully fund a fellow and also still engage with their fellows in various ways. Your sponsors are often engaged in the selection process throughout the 2 years of the fellowship. They want to, make sure that you succeed in your work, and they want to make sure that you are making the impact that you seek to make, and they want to be able to support that in any way that they can. And so they also are very engage in the selection process and the interview process, and also throughout the 2 years of your fellowship. And like I said, they're the ones that are funding and providing the financial and maybe other support sometimes in terms of maybe hosting a training for you or maybe providing food for a training for you. It just depends on the circumstances, but they definitely just want to make sure that you are supported throughout those 2 years. Volunteers may also express issue area and geographic priorities. And if you go on a website, you will definitely see an updated list of our sponsored priorities over the last few years. But this could be that maybe a sponsor is really interested in funding a project only in Pennsylvania and only doing criminal justice reform. Then in that way, they will only see applications that are working on that work. However, we have some sponsors who just want to fund nationwide and have no set preferences. They just want to fund a great project. And so projects in all geographical and issue areas are very highly encouraged because you just never know. Okay, uh, quick break. Any questions about components particularly? I see a number of in the chat, but I just wanted to know if there's any specific questions about what I just went over. No? Okay. Did I see? Um, I'm going to answer this one, Renee, because I'm just about multiple proposals. So that's a good question. But no, you can only submit one proposal with one organization at a time. Um, any recommendation on how to create a project? Yes, I'm actually going to get into that, Kayla, about project design. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay. So submitting a strong application. So application development. This might be the most not the most, but the rather not difficult. I don't want to say it's difficult because I don't want to discourage anyone, but it's a lot. It goes into there's a lot that goes into application because it's conceptualizing a project that a lot of times has not been done before, or you're expanding upon some work, or it's novel, and so conceptualizing can be it can be an interesting process. Also, designing the project, like I said, with the metrics and the different ways that you seek to serve the community or advocate for the community that cannot afford legal services, or have low income communities, low income residents who don't have, or rural residents who don't have access to these legal services. And so that's a really big one as well. Refining and reviewing is a really big part of the application process as well. And then finally, submission. And this all can take time. So we'll talk about each component. So these are the different parts of the application. The basic info, we ask for basic info, law school info and graduation info, basic things, and then a YU statement, or this is a personal statement. So we're calling it the YU statement, in your resume, and you don't have to put your GPA because there's no GPA requirements. But the application proposal narrative, it is composed of a lot of different documents. We ask for a statement of need. We ask for a project description, your different goals over the next 2 years, a work plan, the timeline, the YU or the personal statement, and then potential sponsor engagement opportunities as well is really important. Because like I said, your sponsors want to engage with your project and they want to support you in any ways that they can. And then also the structure, supervision, and history of your host organization is really important. Has your host organization worked with EJW fellows before? Maybe have they been hosting equal justice work before? Have they been doing it for 2 years or 20 years, or is this their first time? And so we really want to know the history around that and what your supervision is going to look like, whether your supervisor has done work in this area before, and what the structure of the organization is going to be. And then also some additional documents such as host or certification form, and also letter to rec, which is really important as well. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So these are just some tips on writing a competitive application. So this is different from a standard job application. It's not a grant proposal or really a business plan. It's really you're really kind of a bit trying to sell your project a little bit, in the sense that, you're trying to convince a funder that there's a big need for this work that you're proposing. Um, and it's a little bit more persuasive in that way. You also want to build a preview team, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more about that. This can be professors, host organization staff, law school career staff persons as well. And then the focus is on fit. And I think I talked about this a little bit, but the it's really important to not just understand that you are a good fit with your host organization, but that you are the best candidate to bring this project at this right time, with this organization. And so all of it has to come together very well. What are the skills and what's your background and skills and experience that says you are the best candidate and to bring this project at this right time, and to be able that what's going to show that you are going to be able to complete this project within 2 years and successfully, make an impact. And so that's really important. Also, right for the current audience, which is your sponsors. But that's why I said it is important to do some research on the types of sponsors we've had. Like I said, law firms. So if you're thinking about law firms and the sponsors who are law firms, you're writing to, partners of the law firms, or the pro bono coordinators that have been doing this work for many, many years. If you're thinking about corporations, you're writing to in-house legal counsel, right? And so you want to think about the different types of sponsors and an audience that you're writing to as well when you're crafting your application and what they want to hear. Um, and then also check out and utilize application resources on our website. And I'll also put a link into how to receive updates and join our network. But that's also, we have a ton of different resources on our website, that you can utilize. And I'm happy to point anyone in the direction, if they have any specific questions around that. Just some more on writing a strong personal statement, or the why you statement, and also strong letters of recommendation. Um, a lot of times I've gotten from students who are first time, lawyers, or this is their first time in the legal field, or first generation, and also students of color, that, I wasn't top of my class. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But there's misconceptions around, if you're not top of your class, you're not going to succeed well. I feel like there's a stigma around that in law school. And I think that there are so many other ways that you can express that you are going to be a zealous advocate. And one of those ways is your personal statement. And so in your personal statement, particularly for fellowships, it's really important to be specific. And so embrace the specificity, and telling clear stories about your journey, your values, and your motivations. You want to be really clear. You want to be really almost blunt in letting us know who you are. Why are you bringing this work? Why is this work personal to you? Connecting those personal experience to the fellowship goals. Show credibility and very thoughtful planning. Um, Also, it could be, oftentimes, moving someone emotionally by your story, uh, with authenticity and genuity, can really make a difference, because they see someone who's real and who's honest and who just really wants to make a difference. Also, revision and reflection process is really important. Effective statements result from multiple drafts, feedback, reflection, and making stories authentic and compelling. So, continuously revising and, maybe editing, and also having a review team, which I'll talk about as well, is really, really important here for your personal statement. Fit and commitment. Like I said, fit is really important, but also for letters of rec, particularly. this is also a really important component because strong recommenders can provide a concrete example of your work, your character, your dedication to public interest, helping sponsors to see your passion is backed by real experience and impact. So having a letter of rec from somebody who's worked with you, a professor who, you have created a bond with, maybe a supervisor from a previous job experience, who's really able to speak to your character and your ethic is really important. So making sure that your letters of rec also fit there and are strong in that way is important as well. It also adds to your credibility beyond your application materials, right? Because this is a trusted perspective on your abilities and your potential, and showing that respected professionals believe you can successfully carry out the proposed project. So this is something that's really important. And if you are interested in applying this cycle, I would start reaching out for letters of rec if you haven't already today, because sometimes it can take a while. One time, one of my professors took 6 months to get me back a letter of rec. So definitely, they're very busy, especially for professors and people who have, full-time jobs and such. People are very busy, so you want to give them enough time and asking early for your letters of rec. And you also want to make sure that you're writing a strong personal statement. Why did that keep happening? Okay. And then importance of mock interviews and a review team. This is so, so, so important because once you get through your application, you've written your application, you've submitted your application, we then have a review process with our alumni team and say your application is screened through there and gets scored. And then then we putting your application in front of sponsors. And then once the application is in front of the sponsors, say they choose you for an interview. And now you have to sell your project verbally to this sponsor. And so that's kind of a skill. Interviewing can be a skill. And so it's really important to set up mock interviews that help you articulate your project clearly and reduce anxiety going into real interviews. It can be a very nerve-wracking experience. And so, what helps to quell that is practice, right? Practice allows you to better connect your story, your project, and your long-term goals and verbally do that in a seamless way. And so it's really important to have a mock interview. Also with mock interviews, you can get actionable feedback from mentors and peers. They can identify gaps, unclear points, missed opportunities, and your responses as well. And your, mock interviews, like career services may be able to do that for you. A previous employer may be able to do that for you. Maybe even alumni, EJW alumni. We're happy to connect you with EJW alumni who maybe has worked at the host organization you're working with. Your host organization as well could be excuse me, her useful contacts on giving mock interviews as well. So make sure that you are doing your research and that you are practicing if you do get that interview. And then a review team as well for your entire application helps to ensure that your personal statement and proposals are clear, they're compelling, they're cohesive, and others can flag assumptions in areas where, more detail and context is needed, especially important for first-time applicants. And so I can't be adamant enough about the importance of a review team here. And also mock interviews helping you prepare for the types of questions our sponsors are likely to ask. And like I said, a lot of times the sponsors are partners at law firms. They are general counsels at major corporations. They're presidents of bar foundations. And so you really want to think about how you're answering these questions and the questions that they're probably going to ask. We do provide a sample interview questions ahead of the interviews that can be helpful. So also taking those questions and having people ask you those questions and curating your answers ahead of those interviews could be really, really helpful as well in terms of your preparation. And also building a support team makes the application process more manageable and increases your chances of success, which is so true. Right? Yeah. These are just some common application mistakes. which is, like I said, over ambitious, unrealistic, or one-dimensional project design. Over ambition, like I said, ambition is great, but you only have 2 years to complete all of these, these goals. And so you want to make sure that they're feasible and that they're realistic and that it's very specific and nuanced in a way that you're able to complete the work and not feel overwhelmed by the work. Um, Also, it would be remiss to not include information about legal or service provider landscape project and project community partners that you've already done work with while you're in law school or before law school. We really want to know, if there's, but if you have a previous work in community service or in public interest, we want to know that. And so you definitely want to add that to your application. Writing too little or lacking explanatory information is also not good. You want to be concise, but you also want to be as explicit as possible and as clear as possible. And then neglecting pro bono opportunity section. This is a no-no as well, because that's how a lot of times when our sponsors are reading the application, they want to know how they're able to engage with their project, whether it's be you are going to develop a training or you're going to develop a workshop that their pro bono attorneys can assist. Maybe you're going to bring a class action suit that their pro bono attorneys can assist with, or they can co-counsel on a case. And so they really want to, if you have ideas around that, if your project promotes, or maybe it's research and writing, it doesn't necessarily always have to be direct legal work. It can also be work for non-attorneys and their paralegals and such. And so make sure that you're thinking about those things. And if your host organization has a pro bono coordinator or a pro bono correct director, connecting with them is really important on this section as well. And then also, like I said, a disjointed personal statement or the why you statement, definitely do not want to have that. It should be clear. It should be poignant. I mean, it should tell us exactly why you want to do this work. And then typos or spelling grammars are big no-no as well. Lack of clarity that makes it hard to follow, big no-no. And so that's where the review team comes in. So definitely make sure that you're reading this multiple times. Somebody and multiple other people are reading your application multiple times for typos, for spelling grammars, and for lack of clarity, which is, it's just not good. Okay, project design. Let me just make sure I'm on time. Yes. Oh, thanks for clarifying that out. Yes, 2 letters of rec. Okay, so for project design, and these are some strong, this is what I believe strong projects have in common, or we believe that, which is strong alignment with the host organization's mission and existing work, which is really important. Realistic, feasible scope that allows meaningful impact within 2 years. Um, it should be clearly identifying the need in the community being served. Like I said, clarity is really big in your application. So making sure that it's clear and it's direct. Also having direct connection between the project and the candidate's background is a plus. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be from the community that you seek to serve, but if you are, we want to know that and how your candidates, the background and your experience or lived perspective connects to the work that you're doing. And then thoughtful plan for sustainability beyond the fellowship as well. Like I said, sustainability is big because we don't want your fellowship to vanish just after 2 years. And then flexibility withstands changes in law, policy, and funding. Things happen. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, some people's fellowship proposal looked way different, and then that was overturned, and they had to change some things following that ruling. And so you want to make sure that there is flexibility in not necessarily modifying the entire project, but definitely thinking through how things maybe look a little different from when you submit to when you start. And then also clear and compelling framing that demonstrates value to sponsors. Like I said, clarity is big, big, big here. So those are just some what makes us project strong. These are just some common issue areas in our class of 2026 of 60 fellows. Affordable housing and criminal justice is always a really big one for educational special education projects and disability and children and youth, and then healthcare and medical legal partnerships, veterans, prisoners' rights, and domestic violence. These are always very big interest areas for all of our sponsors. And then more about pairing up. Like, how do you even find a host organization? What does that even look like? So, some things on and identifying a host organization or candidate. That's for host organizations though. But if you are a candidate and you're looking for a host organization, definitely first use your network. Look at current or prior internships. Maybe you're interning with a legal services organization and they may be interested in applying for a equal justice fellowship. Starting there, maybe you're volunteering, maybe you have externships or you had a job there, or previous to law school. And then also your advisors, your law school provisors, your professors, and then your law school alumni. Use the network that you have. That's really, really important. Also, peer networks and student organizations. If you're on e-boards, or if you are, class president, or it's in affinity groups, those type of networks as well. Ask questions and ask what their interests are, and maybe your interests align, and they can point you to shared opportunities. Supervisors and colleagues are really important as well. If they work in the area that you seek to that you're passionate about and you are thinking about building a project around. Also online tools. There's so many tools online that you can use, such as PSJD, your law school career centers, fellowship databases, and public interest job boards, LinkedIn, and even Facebook. Those are really great opportunities as well. And, Okay. And then start with organizations serving your home or school as well. And then cold outreach and informational interviews is expected. Many of the host organizations, they expect when it comes to fellowships that they're going to get outreach from the people that they've never heard from before. And so it's okay to send a cold email. Hey, I was thinking about doing this work. I would really like to chat with you. Can I set up a virtual call? Can we go to coffee? It's really, really, they looked out for that. And then that also shows self-initiative, which is really important in our fellowships as well, because you are the driving force behind completing your goals. And so um, it's okay to, code outreach if you don't have a host organization in mind. And then also reach out to organizations you admire that you have always probably wanted to work for. Many fellows secure host organizations this way. Hey, I really enjoy it. But I really admire the case that you guys worked on here, or the work that you've done for this community here. They are very receptive to this. So that's one way to also, this is just more on soliciting your utilizing your networks and soliciting, noticing job postings. A lot of host organizations will also post the fellowship as a job posting, so you can apply that way. But also defining your ask, seeking candidates for Equal Justice Works fellowships, definitely being specific there, and describing the project you want and what you're thinking about. And maybe even submitting a brief proposal, maybe 1 page or less, ahead of this conversation, right? And outlining, the qualifications, what qualifies you, what skills you have, what's your background that makes you the best candidate for this work. And then a little bit more on getting to know one another, because you will be submitting your application with the host organization. And so understanding that this is a 2-year professional relationship and mutual fit matters, because it's both you and the host organization collaborating together. Like I said, I think I said this a little bit earlier, look for alignment in both project goals and overall culture. Be prepared to discuss expectations about workload, schedule, like ask these questions about flexibility as well. Learn about organization, culture, values day to day. Like I said, you're going to be here for 2 years, and so it's really important. It's really important to make sure that you're comfortable at your host organization and that you look forward to going to work every day, right? Clarity on supervision, mentorship, opportunities. Definitely asking these questions ahead of time is so important. So you feel supportive, so you feel respected, and also it sets you up for success. Just a little bit on understanding the application, and the application is completed entirely online in our submittable software, and so you can create if you are interested in applying for 2027, you can create an account now. And also, just familiarize yourself with content. You don't have to submit now, obviously, but you could definitely see how everything works and look at the application and such. It is free. You don't have to pay to complete the application. Host organization and candidates, like I said, co-create. This is joint application. So your host organization will have a portion uh, separate. Oh, no. You guys will both fill out the whole thing together. I'm thinking of reports, but you'll fill out the whole application together. It's a joint application, and then, but the candidate is the submitter. So the potential fellow will be the one that ultimately submits the application. This is just a great resource that I like to share with prospective candidates. We have a fellow archive where you can go and meet, look at all of our fellows, the current and all of our alumni, see the work that they've done, see who they're sponsored by, see what issue areas they worked on. I think this is always a great resource if you just, you're just finding out and you're just testing the waters. This is a great resource to just do some more research. So, what's next if you are interested in our 2027 application process? So, if you are at 1L in law school right now and you should be thinking about the type of subject matter and project you're interested in. If you are at 1L, you wouldn't necessarily be applying for our 2027 cycle, you will be applying for our 2028 cycle as a rising 3L. And so, but it's great to start, reaching out to your prospective host organizations, building those relationships. Maybe you get an internship or externship, or maybe start volunteering there, and start thinking about, start building the building blocks of a fellowship come time for you to apply. And then also gaining public interest experience and expanding your skill set is really important. And then if you are a 2L or 3L, and this includes clerking 3Ls or those who are taking gap years or other work that would help you to remain eligible. Start identifying and reach out to host organizations today if you're interested in our 2027 cycle. Also asking professors and supervisors for letters of rec today. It would be really important as well. If if this is something you want to do in this cycle, and also honing your relevant skill set as well. Making sure that your research and your writing skills and your advocacy skills, if you're doing mock trial, making sure those skills are continuing to grow and be set. And then also fine-tuning your resume. And that's part of the review team, right? Having someone review your resume and continuing to edit and make it better as you can. And if you are, this is the date of the closure of our Design Your Own 2027 application. If you are applying for this cycle, definitely create an account and submittable. Start reviewing your project proposal with the host organization and plan submissions. All of the things I think I've said, request letters of rec, YU, and plan for a final review and submission. This is just a timeline for after submission. Feel free to take a screenshot. But after the timeline is closed, after the application is submitted, and in September, in October, we have a fellowship alumni review applications, and then they go on to review for that month of October. And then November to March, we start interviews and on a rolling basis. Host organizations and law school services candidates may. Yes, this is where you do that mock interviews and prepare for interviews together. Selection process closes, and then fellowship class of 2027 is announced next May. In July, incoming fellows may sit for the bar exam, and in September, you will begin your work at your host organization. Okay. And then also join our network if you want to keep up to date on our webinars, newsletters, resources, events, and all of the above. Okay. I see that we still have some people in the room. I'm going to go to the top go through the questions. I see you dropped a lot. Okay. Renee asks, can it be a government agency or only nonprofit? It should be a 501(c) nonprofit. If the government agency is a 501(c) or I think it might be also 3(4), but I would definitely double check, and Al, you can let me know that. But then they would qualify, but it does have to be a nonprofit. Oh, you answered that. I see you answered it in the chat. Thanks, Al. I just saw
Okay.
that. And then second, I think I answered that one. What if post organization? Okay. Al, you were killing it. Um, okay, are there any other questions besides what's been dropped in the chat?
Yeah, it looks like one just came in from Renee. I appreciate this. It's a great question. How many fellowships are usually available versus how many people apply? Um,
Yeah, so the amount of fellowships available are dependent on the number of sponsorships we can confirm each year. So we were for the last two cycles, we've only been able to confirm 60 sponsorships for those years. So that's the amount of fellows that we were able to fund, or fellowships we were able to fund throughout that year. But we received, I believe, close to around 300 applications each year, and so it is a very competitive process. So that's why I hope that this webinar was helpful in writing a competitive application.
right. It is certainly competitive, but still, with those statistics, just assuming 60 fellows are selected out of 300 applications, it's a good 1 in 5 chance of being selected in the end after the end of the interview process.
Yes. Is there a reason sponsors don't want to offer fellowships directly? Hmm. I'm sorry, Renee. Do you mean like why the sponsor isn't just sponsoring like King and Spalding have the fellowship? Just want to specify the question. And you could definitely come off mute, I think. Can they come off mute? If it's easier. Oh, yes, if they have something specific they're looking for, why don't they offer someone directly? Oftentimes the law firms, corporations, or sponsors do have their own fellowship, sometimes. Um, that it's just dependent, but a lot of times they like working with EJW because um, the projects may offer a more variety of issue area preferences and different type of work, pro bono work through the projects, and so it offers a diversity of different type of work that their pro bono attorneys or they even the entity can engage with. And also the benefit of working with EJW as opposed to them doing it directly is we do the back end work as well. So, the screening and making sure that, their preferences and their issue of area preferences are being met as well. Yes, that's a great question. We do not have a matchmaking job board. Um, yeah, finding a potential host organization, like I said, it can be in various ways, but we do not have a matchmaking job board. Sorry to tell you that. That's a great question, though. Maybe we should implement that out.
No, certainly. I do know that there are websites like PSJD and
Yeah.
things that often try to host some of these
Yeah.
fellowship opportunities or work with potential legal services host organizations to work
Yeah.
to post
And
opportunities.
yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes if you even like Google like public interest fellowships, many like job opportunities might pop up. I've done that before because a lot of, like I said, a lot of post organizations do post the fellowship as jobs, as regular jobs on LinkedIn or PSJD, like Al was saying. And so um, it could be easier to find that way. But also just reaching out yourself could be helpful as well if you already know the type of work that you want to do. Excuse me. Guess I'm losing my voice. So our project should be in a collaborate. Yes, your project should be in collaboration with the host organization, working together to, yes, exactly, Kayla. You can reach out to the host organization, or you can, like I said, sometimes they post it as job opportunities, or you can reach out to a host organization. Just set up a meeting and let them know what you're interested in, and see if that would align with the work that they currently do in their mission. And you can also go on our Meet the Fellows page, and if there's, if you're not sure which host organization has funded fellows or interested in funding fellows, you can definitely do that research on our website. um, Sometimes I also reach out to law school. Yes, also your law school career services counselors offices are big as a part of your network as well that you can utilize as well to connect with host organizations. So even starting there could be helpful. Uh, yeah, I believe I can. Right?
Yeah, thanks for following up on that. We will we'll aim to email all of our attendees here today. We'll aim to email you the slides following
Mhm.
this webinar.
Mhm. Thank you. Yes, thanks everyone. Thanks, Renee. I'll be adding you back. Thanks, Angela. Thanks so much for joining. And we'll also be sharing the recording for those who weren't able to attend.
That's right. That'll be posted on our website. Thank you all very much.
Yes.
And thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Elizabeth.